In the shadow of the great military events of the 20th century stands a figure whose influence on Soviet military power is difficult to overestimate. Alexander Ilyich Yegorov, a man whose name rarely appears in popular historical narratives, but whose contribution to the formation and development of the RKKA General Staff became the foundation of the Soviet military organization. Marshal of the Soviet Union, military theorist and strategist, he created a system that defined the armed forces for decades. His path from Tsarist officer to one of the architects of the Soviet military machine reflects the complexity and contradictoriness of the era. An analytical mind and organizational talent allowed Yegorov to develop principles of strategic planning that were ahead of their time. He saw war as a complex organism, requiring precise coordination of all elements. The methods of troop control proposed by Yegorov formed the basis of military art and remain relevant for modern armies worldwide. His legacy is not just pages of military history, but living principles applicable to modern conflicts and strategic challenges. Alexander Ilyich Yegorov was born in 1883 in Buzuluk, Samara Governorate, into a burgher family. His path to the heights of military art began not in prestigious cadet corps, but in an ordinary city school. His humble origins left an imprint on the future Marshal's character. He was accustomed to achieving everything through hard work and an analytical approach to problem solving. Having received his primary education, young Alexander showed outstanding abilities in exact sciences and strategic thinking, which later became his hallmark as a military leader. At the age of 22, Yegorov entered the Kazan Infantry Junkers School, which he graduated from with first-class honors. Here, his leadership qualities and organizational abilities, traits that defined his entire subsequent career, became apparent. Yegorov's officer's service began in the Siberian Rifle Regiment, where he quickly earned the respect of both commanders and subordinates. World War I became a real school of combat experience for Alexander Ilyich, commanding a company and then a battalion. He proved himself to be a tactically competent officer, capable of making unconventional decisions in complex combat situations. Particularly valuable was his experience in coordinating the actions of various units, a skill that later formed the basis of his concept for organizing the general staff. By October 1917, Yegorov had risen to the rank of lieutenant colonel and commanded a regiment. The revolutionary events drastically changed his destiny. Unlike many officers of the Tsarist army, Yegorov accepted the new government and voluntarily joined the Red Army in January 1918. This choice was dictated not so much by ideological convictions as by an understanding of the historical inevitability of the ongoing changes and a desire to serve the fatherland in new conditions. The Civil War became a true test for Yegorov's military talent. Commanding a division and then an army, he developed and carried out complex operations against the troops of Denikin and Wrangel. It was during this period that his unique style of military leadership, a combination of deep analysis of the situation with decisive actions, was finally formed. His abilities for strategic planning were particularly evident during his command of the Southern Front. The operations he developed were characterized by thorough preparation, consideration of all factors, and flexibility of execution. Yegorov knew how to effectively coordinate the actions of diverse forces, achieving maximum results with minimal losses. This experience became invaluable for his future work in organizing the general staff. An important factor in Yegorov's development as a military thinker was his striving for self-education. Even during the Civil War, he found time to study military theoretical works and analyze the experience of World War I. The works of Russian military theorists Alexander Svechin and Alexander Neznamov, as well as the study of German experience in organizing the general staff, had a particular influence on the formation of his views. The General Staff, in Alexander Yegorov's understanding, was not merely an administrative body, but the thinking center of the army, capable of foreseeing and planning military actions on a nationwide scale. In his theoretical works of the early 1930s, he consistently developed the concept of the General Staff as the intellectual core of the armed forces, a body that should work proactively rather than merely reacting to emerging threats. Yegorov wrote, "This approach significantly differed from the then prevalent view of the General Staff as a technical planning body." Yegorov synthesized the best elements of the Russian pre-revolutionary military school with the German model of the Great General Staff, adapting them to Soviet realities. He meticulously studied the organizational experience of the German General Staff, especially during the First World War, but did not blindly copy it, instead, creatively reinterpreting it. From the Russian military tradition, Yegorov inherited an understanding of the importance of the geographical factor and spatial thinking, and from the German, methodicalness and systematicity in organizing staff structures. Fundamentally important in Yegorov's concept was the understanding of the General Staff as a body connecting the country's political leadership with the military command. He noted in one of his analytical memoranda, "This function required General Staff officers to possess not only military knowledge, but also a broad political and economic outlook." Yegorov established special analytical groups within the General Staff dedicated to the comprehensive assessment of the military political situation. Particular attention in Yegorov's works was given to the information and analytical function of the General Staff. He was the first in Soviet military science to speak about the necessity of creating a unified system for collecting and analyzing information about potential adversaries, including both intelligence data and open sources. At his initiative, the department responsible for studying foreign armies was significantly expanded. Yegorov's approach to planning was innovative for its time. He abandoned rigid, schematic plans in favor of flexible planning with variable solutions depending on the developing situation. He wrote, "This principle of variable planning became one of the cornerstones of the Soviet General Staff's work." Organizationally, Yegorov advocated for strict centralization of strategic planning while simultaneously decentralizing execution. He believed that front and army commanders should have sufficient freedom of action within the overall strategic design. This idea balanced the necessity of unified leadership with the importance of initiative among commanders on the ground. Upon assuming the post of Chief of Staff of the Workers' and Peasants' Red Army in 1931, Alexander Yegorov immediately embarked on a large-scale reform of the military structure. He understood that modern warfare demanded not just brave soldiers and talented commanders, but also a perfect organization capable of coordinating the most complex operations across a vast country. Yegorov's first step was a clear delineation of functions between the operational and administrative departments of the General Staff. He declared at one of the first meetings, "This simple yet revolutionary idea allowed the intellectual resources of the staff to focus on strategic planning and analysis." Under Yegorov's leadership, a unique three-tier structure of military command was created. The upper tier, the General Staff, dealt with global planning and coordination. The middle tier, the staffs of military districts, adapted general directives to regional conditions. The lower tier, tactical staffs, was responsible for the direct execution of tasks. This system ensured both unity of command and the necessary flexibility on the ground. Yegorov paid particular attention to the creation of specialized departments for branches of service within the General Staff. He was the first to realize that aviation, tank forces, and artillery required a special approach to planning and deployment. At his initiative, departments were formed, staffed by specialists in each branch of service, which allowed for the development of tactics for their use, taking into account technical characteristics. A revolutionary innovation was the establishment of a military scientific research department. Yegorov believed that the army should not only follow technical progress, but also guide it. Military science must anticipate the development of technology and develop methods for its application in advance, he wrote in one of his directives. This department became a bridge between theoretical research and the practical needs of the army. Yegorov's special merit was the reorganization of the military intelligence system and its integration into the general staff structure. He created a multi-level system for collecting and analyzing information, which included both agent-based intelligence and technical surveillance means. For the first time in Soviet military practice, intelligence information was systematically used in strategic planning. A crucial element of Yegorov's reforms was the creation of a mobilization planning system. He developed the concept of hidden mobilization, which allowed the economy to be switched to a wartime footing in the shortest possible time, without declaring general mobilization. This idea was significantly ahead of its time and was fully appreciated only during the Great Patriotic War. The effectiveness of the organizational model proposed by Yegorov was confirmed during major military exercises in 1935–36. For the first time in the history of the Soviet armed forces, it was possible to coordinate the actions of ground forces, aviation, and the Navy within a single operation. Observers noted an unprecedented level of interaction between various branches of service and clarity of command. Yegorov's reforms laid the foundation for an organizational structure that, with minimal changes, existed until the end of the 20th century. His ideas about centralized strategic planning with tactical flexibility, about the need for a scientific approach to military affairs, and about the importance of information and analytical work remain relevant in modern military science. Strategic planning, as understood by Alexander Yegorov, was not merely a set of military directives, but a holistic scientific methodology. The system of analysis and forecasting he developed was decades ahead of its time and laid the foundation for modern military science. At the core of his approach was the principle of multi-factor analysis, taking into account not only purely military, but also economic, geographical, demographic, and even psychological aspects of impending operations. Yegorov asserted, "War is waged not only with weapons, but also with resources, space, and time." This formula became the cornerstone of his methodology. Revolutionary for the 1930s was Yegorov's method of modeling military actions. Various conflict scenarios were reproduced in special strategic games, which allowed for the identification of weaknesses in planning and the preparation of alternative solutions in advance. Particularly innovative was the system for assessing probabilities. Each scenario was assigned a probability coefficient, which allowed for the rational allocation of resources during preparation. Yegorov's approach to analyzing enemy potential appeared strikingly modern. He developed a comprehensive methodology for assessing not only the quantitative indicators of a potential adversary's armed forces, but also qualitative characteristics, the level of personnel training, morale, technological development, and economic stability. To systematize this work, Yegorov established a special analytical unit within the General Staff, which was engaged in continuous monitoring of foreign armies. One of Yegorov's main achievements was the development of a methodology for planning large-scale operations involving various branches of service. He created a system of, quote, 0 key vectors of offense or defense on which main efforts were concentrated. Detailed plans were developed for each direction, taking into account terrain features, infrastructure, and enemy capabilities. Particular attention was paid to logistical support. Yegorov was the first in Soviet military science to speak about the need to create mobile repair bases capable of following advancing troops. This idea significantly increased the pace of offensive operations and reduced dependence on stretched communications. An innovative element of Yegorov's methodology was the introduction of mathematical methods into military planning. He developed a system for calculating the optimal ratio of forces in various sectors of the front, taking into account not only quantitative indicators, but also qualitative characteristics of troops. These calculations made it possible to achieve decisive superiority in the direction of the main thrust with overall parity of forces. Yegorov made a special contribution to the development of the theory of deep operations. He expanded the concept proposed by Vladimir Triandafilov, supplementing it with a detailed methodology for planning and support. Yegorov viewed a deep operation as a complex system of interconnected actions requiring precise synchronization of all elements. For this purpose, he developed a method of time charts that allowed for the coordination of actions of various branches of service with hourly precision. The system of troop command and control during operations developed by Yegorov appeared strikingly modern. He created the concept of mobile command posts, equipped with communication means and capable of moving along with advancing troops. This ensured continuity of command and the ability to respond promptly to changes in the situation. One of Alexander Yegorov's greatest achievements was the development of a fundamentally new system of interaction between different branches of service. In the early 1930s, when technological progress drastically changed the face of the Army, there arose an urgent need for coordination mechanisms between infantry, artillery, armored forces, and aviation. Yegorov was the first in Soviet military science to realize that future wars would be won not by individual branches of service, but by their coordinated interaction. In his fundamental work, Foundations of Troop Interaction in a Modern Operation, published in 1933, Yegorov laid the theoretical groundwork for inter-service coordination. He wrote, "Each branch of service possesses unique capabilities and limitations. The art of the commander lies in ensuring that these capabilities mutually reinforce each other, and limitations are compensated for." This simple but brilliant idea formed the basis of the entire interaction system. Yegorov developed the concept of a single combat space, in which the actions of all branches of service are subordinate to a common design and synchronized in time. To implement this idea, he created a special methodology for planning joint operations, which included detailed timelines, interaction maps, and a clear distribution of responsibilities. Yegorov paid particular attention to the interaction of aviation with ground forces. He developed a system of ground-based targeting, allowing aviation to deliver precise strikes against identified targets. For this purpose, aviation liaison groups equipped with special communication means were created in the headquarters of ground formations. This system was successfully tested in exercises of the Kiev military district in the summer of 1935 and received high praise from both Soviet and foreign observers. No less important was Yegorov's proposed solution to the problem of tank-infantry interaction. Unlike many theorists who saw tanks as an independent strike force, he insisted on their close coordination with infantry units. A tank without infantry is a blind giant. Infantry without tanks is a devicesless mass, Yegorov stated at one of the command staff meetings. The tactics he developed envisioned infantry moving directly behind tanks, ensuring mutual support and protection. For artillery, Yegorov created a system of fire support for advancing troops. based on the sequential transfer of fire deep into the enemy's defense. This method, known as the fire shaft, allowed for the maintenance of an offensive without the risk of hitting friendly troops, and was successfully applied during exercises of the Belarusian military district. A fundamentally new element of the interaction system was the concept of airborne operations. Yegorov was the first in Soviet military science to develop a methodology for using airborne landings in conjunction with advancing ground forces. He envisioned the landing of airborne troops in the enemy's rear to capture key objectives, followed by a link-up with the main forces. This concept was brilliantly implemented in exercises near Kiev, where, for the first time in world practice, a large airborne landing of over 1,200 personnel was carried out. Yegorov was not limited to theoretical developments. He created a system for practical training of troops in interaction. At his initiative, special training centers were organized where various scenarios of joint actions were practiced. Particular attention was paid to the training of staff officers responsible for coordination. A special training program was developed for them, including both theoretical training and practical field exercises. The defensive doctrine of the Soviet Union in the 1930s was formed under conditions of escalating international tension. Alexander Yegorov, upon heading the General Staff, immediately recognized the necessity of creating a comprehensive defensive concept capable of countering potential aggression from technically advanced adversaries. In his fundamental work, Strategic Defense in Modern Warfare, published in 1934, he laid the theoretical foundations of the Soviet defensive doctrine. Yegorov wrote, "Defense is not a passive waiting for a blow, but an active form of combat, requiring no less skill than offense." This idea became revolutionary for military science at that time. At the core of Yegorov's defensive concept was the idea of echeloned defense. He developed a system of successive defensive lines, each of which was intended not only to contain the enemy, but also to create conditions for a counterattack. Special attention was paid to the organization of anti-tank defense. The main problem of that time, Yegorov proposed the concept of anti-tank areas saturated with artillery and engineering obstacles. These areas were meant to channel the movement of enemy tank columns and direct them under the fire of pre-prepared firing assets. A groundbreaking element of the defensive doctrine was the system of mobile defense developed by Yegorov. Unlike the static defensive lines of World War I, it envisioned maneuvering forces and assets, creating false defensive positions and sudden counterattacks on the flanks of the advancing enemy. Yegorov asserted at meetings of the High Command. Yegorov's theoretical developments found practical application during large-scale exercises of the Kiev Special Military District in the summer of 1936. In these exercises, a system of complex defense involving all branches of service was worked out for the first time. Special attention was paid to the interaction of anti-tank artillery with engineering obstacles and aviation. The results exceeded expectations. The defending side not only successfully repelled the attack, but also conducted an effective counterattack. A crucial aspect of Yegorov's defensive doctrine was the organization of air defense. He was the first in Soviet military science to develop the concept of zonal object air defense, which envisioned the creation of protected areas around key industrial and military facilities. To implement this idea, Yegorov initiated a large-scale program for the construction of anti-aircraft batteries and fighter aircraft airfields around strategically important centers. A special place in the defensive concept was occupied by the preparation of the theater of military operations. Yegorov developed a detailed methodology for analyzing terrain from the perspective of defensive capabilities. At his initiative, special engineering reconnaissance groups were created to study western border regions and plan defensive structures. The result of this work was detailed plans for the fortification equipment of potential enemy offensive directions. Yegorov attached immense importance to mobilization readiness in defensive strategy. He created a system of pre-mobilization measures, a complex of actions that could be carried out before the official declaration of mobilization. This system allowed for a significant reduction in the time required to deploy troops in threatened directions, and provided the opportunity to occupy prepared defensive lines in advance. The creation of an effective system for training military personnel became one of Alexander Yegorov's most significant achievements. Understanding that even the most perfect strategic concepts are useless without qualified implementers, he directed significant efforts towards forming a new generation of commanders. His pedagogical system was based on a harmonious combination of theoretical training with practical experience. Yegorov said at the opening of advanced training courses for senior command staff in 1932. This phrase became the motto of the military command school he established. The foundation of Yegorov's pedagogical concept was the principle of continuous education. He created a multi-level training system, ranging from tactical courses for junior officers to academic programs for senior command staff. Special attention was paid to the continuity of educational programs. Each subsequent level logically continued the previous one, deepening and expanding the acquired knowledge. A novel element of Yegorov's system was the introduction of practical teaching methods. Instead of traditional lectures and rote memorization of regulations, he introduced interactive forms of learning, war games, solving tactical problems, and command staff exercises. He asserted at a meeting of heads of military educational institutions. A special role in the personnel training system was played by the Frunze Military Academy, which Yegorov effectively transformed into a center of military thought. At his initiative, the curriculum was radically revised, with an emphasis on studying modern forms of warfare. For the first time, disciplines such as military management psychology, war economics, and strategic planning were included in the curriculum. To teach these subjects, Yegorov attracted the best specialists, including civilian scientists and foreign consultants. A fundamentally new approach was the creation of research laboratories at the academy, where students could participate in the development of new tactical techniques and methods of troop management. This allowed not only for the acquisition of theoretical knowledge, but also for a real contribution to the development of military science. Many innovative concepts, subsequently implemented in the troops, were born precisely in these laboratories. Yegorov paid particular attention to the training of staff officers. He believed that modern warfare requires not only brave commanders, but also qualified staff officers, capable of planning complex operations and coordinating the actions of various branches of service. At his initiative, a special program for training general staff officers was created, which included an in-depth study of operational art, military geography, and the history of military campaigns. The most important element of Yegorov's system was the training of teaching staff. He established special courses for future instructors at the military academy, where particular attention was paid to the methodology of teaching adults with combat experience. Teaching military affairs is a special art, requiring not only knowledge of the subject but also the ability to convey that knowledge to others, Yegorov said at the opening of these courses. The theoretical legacy of Alexander Yegorov represents a fundamental contribution to the development of Soviet military science. His works, created during the period of the active formation of the Red Army, laid the foundations of strategic thinking that remain relevant to this day. Central to Yegorov's scientific legacy is the monograph Tactics and Operational Art of the Red Army in the 30s, published in 1933. In this work, he, for the first time, systematized the experience of the Civil War and formulated the principles of conducting modern combat operations, taking into account technical progress and the changing nature of armed struggle. Of particular value is his developed theory of deep operation, which anticipated the development of military art by decades. Yegorov wrote, "Modern war requires not just a breakthrough of the enemy's front, but also the immediate development of success in depth, disorganization of his rear, and encirclement of large groupings." This concept was brilliantly implemented by Soviet troops during the Great Patriotic War and is still studied in military academies around the world. No less significant was Yegorov's contribution to the development of the theory of interbranch cooperation. In his work, Principles of Coordination in Modern Combat, he for the first time proposed a scientifically based methodology for organizing joint actions of infantry, artillery, tanks, and aviation. The interaction schemes he developed were characterized by flexibility and adaptability to changing circumstances. Yegorov emphasized, "Each branch of service has its strengths and weaknesses. The art of a commander lies in making the most of the advantages of each and compensating for shortcomings through others." Of particular note is Yegorov's developed concept of strategic reconnaissance. In his work, Information Support for Operations, he laid the foundations for a comprehensive approach to collecting and analyzing data about the enemy. Yegorov viewed reconnaissance not as an auxiliary function, but as an integral element of planning and conducting combat operations. He wrote, "Modern war is, first and foremost, an information war. A commander who possesses complete and reliable information has a decisive advantage over the enemy." Yegorov's approach to issues of military psychology was innovative for its time. In the work Moral and Psychological Factors of Modern War, he investigated the influence of combat stress on the actions of troops and proposed methods for maintaining high morale in conditions of protracted combat operations. Yegorov asserted, "Technology and tactics are powerless if the soldier does not believe in victory. Maintaining morale is as important a task for a commander as the correct placement of firepower." An important direction of Yegorov's scientific activity was the study of the experience of the First World War. In the monograph Lessons of the World War, he conducted a detailed analysis of major operations and identified patterns determining the success or failure of strategic decisions. Yegorov paid particular attention to the causes of the defeats of the Russian army, striving to learn lessons for the future. He wrote, "History generously shares experience with those who know how to perceive it. Our task is not to repeat the mistakes of the past and to develop the successful solutions of our predecessors." Yegorov's scientific methodology was distinguished by its systematic nature and interdisciplinary approach. He was one of the first to use mathematical methods in military science, applying statistical analysis to assess the effectiveness of various tactical techniques. In the work Quantitative Methods in Military Art, Yegorov laid the foundations of a scientific approach to planning operations based on precise calculations and not only on the commander's intuition. The practical value of Yegorov's theoretical developments was confirmed during large-scale exercises in the 1930s. Many of his concepts, initially met with skepticism, proved their effectiveness in real-world conditions. Particularly successful were his proposed methods for organizing the breakthrough of fortified areas and developing success in operational depth. The year 38 became a turning point in the fate of Alexander Yegorov. The wave of political repressions that swept through the Red Army after the Tukhachevsky affair relentlessly approached the chief of the General Staff. Despite impeccable service and outstanding achievements, Yegorov found himself dangerously close to enemies of the people. His long-standing connections with military leaders, already declared traitors, proved fatal. In February 1938, the Marshal was removed from the post of Chief of the General Staff and transferred to the insignificant position of Deputy People's Commissar of Defense. This was the beginning of the end. Clouds gathered with each passing day. Yegorov sensed the approaching misfortune but continued to work, hoping that his merits to the country would be taken into account. He was completing his fundamental work, where he summarized years of experience and formulated principles that could save the country in an upcoming conflict. Fate decreed otherwise. On March 27, 1939, Yegorov was arrested on charges of participating in The investigation was conducted using inadmissible methods. Despite physical and moral suffering, Yegorov maintained his dignity, rejecting the absurd accusations. However, the system demanded sacrifices. On February 23, 1940, the Military Collegium of the Supreme Court sentenced the Marshal to the highest measure of punishment. The sentence was carried out on the same day. Thus, the life of a man who dedicated himself to creating an invincible army was tragically cut short. What happened to Yegorov is what happened to many prominent figures of that era. He was erased from history. His works were removed from libraries. His name disappeared from textbooks and encyclopedias. The concepts he developed continued to be used, but without mentioning the author. The political conjuncture demanded the oblivion of the quote. Paradoxically, many of Yegorov's ideas found application during the Great Patriotic War. The system of echeloned defense, the methodology for organizing counterattacks, the principles of interbranch cooperation, all this saved the lives of Soviet soldiers and brought victory closer. Military leaders who had been his students led major operations but could not publicly acknowledge their teacher. The first steps towards restoring justice were taken after Stalin's death. In 1956, Yegorov was posthumously rehabilitated. However, the full return of his name to history began only in the years of perestroika. Researchers gained access to archival materials, and works dedicated to his contribution to military science began to be published. Gradually, the true scale of Yegorov's personality and the significance of his legacy became apparent. Modern military historians recognize Yegorov as one of the founders of the Soviet military school. His methodological approaches to the organization of the general staff, strategic planning, and training of command personnel have stood the test of time. Many principles formulated by him in the 30s remain relevant today, in the era of digital technologies and high-precision weapons. Particularly valuable is his systemic approach to military affairs. The ability to see the interconnections between various factors and create harmonious management structures. This capacity for strategic thinking makes Yegorov's legacy relevant not only in the military sphere, but also in civilian administration. Yegorov's tragedy is not only the personal drama of an outstanding man, but also a loss for the entire country. His premature departure deprived the army of a talented leader during a critical pre-war period. Many miscalculations of the initial stage of the Great Patriotic War could have been avoided if his experience and intuition had served the country during that difficult time. The legacy of Alexander Yegorov is strikingly relevant in the current conditions of military development and strategic planning. Almost a century after the creation of his concepts, many principles laid down by the Marshal continue to serve as a guide for military organizations worldwide. In the era of digital technologies and network-centric warfare, his developed methodology of systemic analysis and multifactorial planning acquires particular value. Modern military conflicts demonstrate Yegorov's correctness. in asserting that the success of an operation depends not only on the number of troops and equipment, but also on the quality of command, coordination of actions, and information support. The information analytical component, to which Yegorov attached paramount importance, has become critically important in the context of information confrontation in the 21st century. The model of intelligence analytical service of the General Staff created by him anticipated modern situational analysis centers working with large data arrays. Surprisingly, the multi-level information evaluation methodology proposed by Yegorov in the 1930s is conceptually close to modern algorithms for processing intelligence data. The principle of variable planning, developed by Yegorov, has acquired new meaning in the era of hybrid wars and asymmetric conflicts. His approach, which involves developing several operations scenarios with different probabilities of realization, is today considered a standard of strategic planning in the leading armies of the world. Modern military planners, using computer modeling and decision support systems, essentially implement the methodology conceptually developed by Yegorov. The organizational structure of the General Staff, proposed by Yegorov, is preserved with minimal changes in most modern armies. The division into operational, intelligence, mobilization, and other departments, their functional interaction. All this is the legacy of Yegorov's system. Particularly relevant in modern conditions has become Yegorov's idea of the need for close integration of military planning with economic, diplomatic, and informational aspects of state strategy. Today, this approach is implemented in the concept of comprehensive security, combining military and non-military instruments to ensure national interests. The principles of inter-service interaction developed by Yegorov have found new development in the modern concept of joint operations. His idea of the need to synchronize the actions of various branches of service to achieve a synergistic effect underlies the modern doctrine of joint actions. Technical means of coordination, which Yegorov could only dream of, today allow his concept of a unified battle space to be realized at a qualitatively new level. The system of military personnel training created by Yegorov has also stood the test of time. His approach, combining fundamental education with practical skills, remains the basis of modern military educational programs. Particularly relevant is Yegorov's emphasis on developing analytical thinking and the ability to make independent decisions in non-standard situations. These qualities become critically important in the conditions of modern conflicts, characterized by high dynamics and uncertainty. Yegorov's defensive doctrine, based on the concept of active defense and maneuver of forces, is reflected in modern theories of deterrence and limited military actions. His idea of the need to prepare the theater of war and create an echeloned defense system remains relevant, despite revolutionary changes in military technologies. Even in the era of high-precision weapons and delivery systems capable of overcoming any distances, the basic principles of organizing defense formulated by Yegorov retain their significance. Of particular value to modern military theorists is Yegorov's methodological approach to the analysis of military conflicts. His systemic thinking, the ability to see interconnections between various factors and identify key elements of complex processes, remain a model of analytical work. In an era of information overload, the ability to separate the essential from the secondary and build a holistic picture becomes a critically important skill for a military leader. Modern conflicts in Syria, Ukraine, and other regions of the world confirm the relevance of many provisions formulated by Yegorov. His concept of a deep operation involving simultaneous impact on the entire depth of the enemy's formation is being implemented today using high-precision weapons and electronic warfare means. The principles of maneuver, concentration of efforts in key directions, and surprise, which Yegorov considered fundamental, remain effective in modern conditions. The legacy of Alexander Yegorov extends far beyond his time, remaining a living source of military wisdom for modern strategists. The lessons drawn from his experience form a holistic system of knowledge applicable to the challenges of the 21st century. First and foremost, this is an understanding of war as a complex, multifaceted phenomenon requiring a comprehensive approach. Yegorov was ahead of his time, creating a methodology that considered not only purely military, but also economic, psychological, and geographical aspects of conflict. This holistic approach is now recognized as fundamental in military science. The second crucial lesson is the need for a balance between centralized control and initiative on the ground. Yegorov created a system where strategic planning was centralized, but executors had sufficient freedom to adapt to changing circumstances. This principle is particularly relevant in an era of highly dynamic conflicts, where the situation on the battlefield can change hourly. The third lesson concerns information and analytical work. Yegorov attached paramount importance to intelligence and data analysis, creating a powerful analytical service within the general staff. In the modern era of informational warfare and cyber threats, this aspect becomes crucial. The fourth lesson is the need for continuous learning and adaptation. The personnel training system created by Yegorov was based on the principle of continuous education and development. In the context of rapid technological progress, this idea becomes critically important for maintaining the combat readiness of the armed forces. The fifth lesson is the importance of inter-service interaction. Yegorov's developed concept of coordinating various branches of service anticipated the modern doctrine of joint operations. His methodology for organizing interaction between infantry, artillery, tanks, and aviation laid the foundations of modern military planning. Of particular value is Yegorov's defensive doctrine, based on the concept of active defense. Unlike the static defensive lines of the past, it provided for maneuver of forces, counterattacks, and deep echelonment. These principles remain relevant even in the era of precision weapons and unmanned systems. Yegorov's legacy requires further study and creative development. His works, long remaining classified or forgotten, contain ideas that have yet to be fully comprehended and applied. Modern military academies should include the study of his theoretical works in officer training programs. This will allow a new generation of military leaders to master the methodology of strategic thinking developed by one of the greatest military minds of the 20th century. It is important to understand that the value of Yegorov's legacy is not limited to the purely military sphere. His approach to organizing complex systems, methods of analysis, and decision-making in conditions of uncertainty can find application in public administration, crisis management, and strategic planning. The return of Alexander Yegorov's name to the pantheon of outstanding Russian military figures is not only a restoration of historical justice, but also the acquisition of a most valuable intellectual resource for solving modern security problems. His life, tragically cut short during the years of repression, continues in his ideas, concepts, and methodological approaches. Yegorov's fate is symbolic. It reflects the complex and contradictory path of development of domestic military science, periods of ups and downs, achievements and losses. But the main lesson of his life is an example of service to the fatherland despite all the vicissitudes of fate, an example of intellectual honesty and professional devotion. Modern military commanders can find in his biography a model of how a true strategist should think and act, broadly, systematically, ahead of his time.